Welcome. Your art is a spell, and it will change your life and the world around you. Estamos aquí en LACMA. We are here at LACMA. We are recording. This is for Your Art is a Spell, and I'm here with Lineadeluz.
And Edgar, Fabian, Frias behind the camera.
Yeah.
We're here at LACMA, and I just wanted to share this powerful alignment that Edgar and I have. So we came here to LACMA today, and we actually are here before the opening of Nancy Baker Cahill's new work called Substrate, here at the very top of LACMA. And as you can see, there's already a lot of very interested people looking and interacting with the piece. And what's very exciting is that this work is about communal archiving and people's ideas of how to contribute to kind of this interconnected nodal exploration through spores and through roots and through kind of this idea of the tree and the rhizome, right? So it was very, very exciting for us to be able to interact with it.
And here are some people who are connecting with the work. Nancy Baker Cahill is a Los Angeles-based artist who has currently created AR experiences at the Whitney, at the Hammer Museum, and now, as of today, at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. So on today's episode of Your Art is a Spell, we're going to be talking about digital art, the lineages of digital art practice. They have this incredible exhibition called Digital Witness that is essentially a survey of digital art in all of its iterations in so many different forms. And it is looking at digital art as not something that is only contemporary, but a part of a long lineage of art practice tied into so many different disciplines, as we will be seeing today as we move through this exhibition. If you're listening to this on the podcast, I want to invite you to check us out on YouTube, that you can get a video version of this episode. If not, I invite you to imagine these works and then to come and see how your vision connects to what we actually saw at the museum.
So in the ever-searching quest that Edgar and I go on, ¿Dónde está el arte digital? Where's the digital art? And today here we're in this brand new show, Digital Witness, here at LACMA, and we're very excited to see how is digital art being presented, how is it being explored, what narratives are being included, how is this being tied into art history, and we're very excited to see here what pieces are popping up, which ones are getting called to our attention. We're here to explore our genealogies and the ways that we ourselves are also in conversation within this realm of digital art. So today we're going to be digital art witnesses, and we're very excited for you to join us today. So here we are going to talk about two pieces that I think are very interesting and are definitely very much within our genealogies as digital artists, particularly from the standpoint of the Selfie Institute and my art practice. So this is by Martine Gutierrez. It's called Queer Rage. This is from 2018. And again, it's how are queer folks taking their representation into their own hands, and not only as a photograph but also constructing a narrative and an image. Here we see a lot of different collage images of nature with this person in the middle, right? Almost taking on this natural landscape and talking also too about how nature is very queer, right? And when I see this figure in the center, I almost see them as very much inserted within this natural landscape, right? And I really love the way that it's almost a very fragmented portrait of nature, within nature, within nature, and within this idea of ferocity. And I really like that. And now I really want to talk about this piece by Jennifer Greenburg called Roxy, 2023. What really stood out to me from this piece, it's that it's from a series of constructed portraits, right? So these are photographs from her archive that have been scanned and altered through digital manipulations, right? They've been collaged, they've been painted, refined, and the end result is we have, again, almost evidence of just the time and a moment and the manipulation of light, almost speaking as a manipulation of the self, right? When we're talking about how digital media has allowed us to really explore and present ourselves in many different ways. And what really spoke to me about this piece is the fact that, these are pieces that have been modified from her archive. So it's like, how are we taking past moments and bringing them into the contemporary and bringing them into the future, right? So I feel like both of these pieces really do speak to queer futurities. They speak to how the digital opens up a space for us to reflect on ourselves, to explore and present ourselves in different ways. And particularly these two pieces within the context of my practice as Lineadeluz, as a Selfie Institute, is how are we using our portraits, our selfies, and engaging in a dance, in a choreography with technology to bring about different portals of the selves, right? Quantum selfie mechanics comes into mind. Is how are we manipulating, how are we playing with light, and how do these become portals to other versions of the selves and to other possibilities of being? So I really, really enjoy that these two pieces are in conversation with each other, are within this exhibition of digital witness, because when we speak to digital witness, it's not only us witnessing the outside world, but also witnessing ourselves through these technologies, which have become a very intimate and very esoteric and almost also spiritual exploration of the self. So another thing that I also want to bring into this space is the way that artists are also pushing up against these infrastructures, these operating systems that make us and almost expect us to work with these mediums in a certain way, right? If we think about a certain operating system or the infrastructure of certain technology, we are expected to interact with and create with technology in a certain way, right? And both of these artists are really pushing up against these boundaries of what technology can do and what it can be. And I really want to tie that into a piece that I'm wearing by an artist called MarvinYQuetzal. And this is actually a photograph of a trans artist from Mexico City, and it reads Trans Rage. And this is actually a photograph that has not been digitally manipulated at all. And it really speaks to the way that, again, how are we using these technologies not only to represent and to document, but also to really expand on what it means to be present via collaging, mixing, repurposing, glitching.
I'm standing here in front of Mongrel. It is a work called Heritage Gold, and it is made up by a collective known as Mongrel, which are the artists Graham Harwood, Mervyn Jarman, Richard Pierre Davis, and Matsuko Yokoji. And we were just told by the gallery attendant that someone was a little too excited playing with this piece, and that it actually has glitched out and that we need to wait a few minutes to use it. And I think this really speaks to the immediacy that we expect to be able to engage with technology, and how we in many ways have been trained to work with technology or to approach it in a specific way. And the glitches are these moments where we are reminded, where we get to self-reflect on the often unseen structures that uphold or that create these spaces for digital interfacing. And one thing I know about this work is that it is attempting to look at Photoshop. And I think, the glitch is something that comes up as a way of interrupting what some of these structures try to uphold. We're all in much, much gratitude to Legacy Russell as a visionary scholar who has allowed us to see the glitch as a moment, as a space that is pregnant with possibility that we can really work with, play with. And we're going to see if we could actually try to use this piece now that it seems like it might have restarted. And I'm going to be clicking on brown female. It lets me. Oh, wow. So you could see on top, it says heritage. You can invent a new family. You could kill, birth, bastard birth, immigration setup, migrate. It also has social status. I'm going to put aristocratic, and you see that changed the look. You could also work with the skin with adjusting the flesh tone. We're going to work with that flesh tone, make it a little different. Racialization allows you to flip it on its head. And there's also social selection as well. And so really speaking to how these technologies create a sense of place, a sense of hierarchy, and in many ways how this can be innocuous or invisible. And so we're going to save this new image that we've made. I want to just show it here so you can see. This brown female has been intervened through this program, and we're going to be bastard birth as, which is save. We're going to save it, and we're going to replace it. So now the brown female has been replaced. Yes. Glitching. Wow.
So this piece that we're seeing is Kat Frazier's Self-Care is Officially Over, and this is really just a call to living and occupying the space of also social media, right? How are we engaging with this very almost aligned idea of the meme? How is the meme almost like this very comical exploration? And when we have the symbol of the Barbie and this idea of self-care, it really brings into question, right, how the digital via the meme, via almost of like these very comical, whimsical, ridiculous pieces online are also calling to the idea of how the digital is serving as a witness and almost as a call out to almost even ridicule the way that we have these conspicuous consumption of images that are so easily like reproduced online and that are also pointing us in a direction of even how this obsession and this engagement with technologies have almost even eliminated this idea of what self-care is. So here we are at the station, and it's called the AMIGA demo scene, and it's talking about the AMIGA 500, which was a popular computer for home use. And what really speaks to me about this piece is that it's also calling in this long legacy of hacking and of glitching computers, both hardware and software, to almost push the limits and the boundaries of what can be made with these machines. And something that I really enjoyed on the headphones is that a lot of these components are not only visual, but also auditory. And this is really bringing in the legacy of the 8-bit music scene, of the chiptune scene. So important to really bring in, again, just the diversity of ways that digital artists can look like and expand on. This idea of agency, of almost, doing something naughty with these machines, right? Where you have these programmers, these people that design these machines that are often, from a very particular socioeconomic standpoint, right? They tend to be white, cis men of the global north, for the most part, that, are putting out these instruments into the world. And then you have people from all regions of the world that are really trying to have some agency and bend to their will what it means to explore with the possibility of the machine. So it is very beautiful to see the way that it is almost not only hacking very literally these physical systems, but also these ideologies of what the possibility of these interfaces are. In this room, and I want to talk just very briefly, there's so many pieces here. There's this one by Sofia Maria. There's this one by Jennifer Morla. In these two pieces, I really think a lot about what it means to be interacting with these digital interfaces and relating them to the body, and how not only does the technology itself prove to be very malleable, but also how the body, as a result of it being filtered and being interacted and manipulated with these technologies, also reminds us of the malleability and the performativity of the body and of the self when put through these different digital interfaces. And I think that really reminds me a lot of both Edgar's and I's work when we talk about the performativity of the self and the almost choreographies and the dance that we have with these mediums, with these technologies, technologies that open up a space of possibility, a space of question, and also a space of liminality of how the digital is really a space full of questioning and of exploration that, when paired with questions of the body and identity, can really bring us into this almost like very queer sense of the interface, right, and of technology. And I think that's something that Edgar and I always talk about too, of how gender is a technology and how that technology is, you know, played around with and moved around a lot with technology, you know, with the camera, with manipulation, with all of these different technological vessels that remind us that the body itself is a technology. But then again, as we are layering it with these digital interfaces, add this whole set of nuance, questioning this whole new meaning of what it does mean to be a digital witness. So here we are with the piece by Casey Kauffmann. It's called It's Over Bitch, and it's really interesting to think about this piece as a piece that is made using iPhone software, and it's really bringing together kind of like this pop ephemera, these GIFs, these materials online, and it really brings into question what it means for representations of selfhood and femininity online. And I think this piece is so powerful because not only is it like almost even queer femme world building, but it's also really speaking to the power of digital art as art spells too, right? In this idea of the availability and the possibility for people to create themselves in their own image and to explore their own ideas of what it can be. I really enjoy that, and that it is explicitly mentioned that this was made using iPhone software, because again, it speaks to the idea that we now live in a time where the digital is so expansive and so in the day-to-day that we can be making art with our digital phones, with materials that are very accessible to the public, and it opens up this question of just the possibility of accessibility and what the digital has in our current state. There's so many digital artists out there that maybe don't consider themselves digital artists, but that are, you know, creating documentation, that are taking selfies, that are creating collages, that are making work that is very, very important and completely situates itself within this idea of contemporary art making. So I really feel called, and I really do think that this piece is very special because it openly talks about the possibility of not only in the subject matter, but also in the medium and the formats that are being explored. So I think this is definitely one of the pieces that speaks to me and that I really see both myself and Edgar and a lot of other friends reflected in. So just a special shout out to Casey for just reminding us that there is so much open possibility and accessibility within the digital art world, and that you can be a digital artist if you are making art with your phone. So here is another piece by Pen and Pixel Graphics. So this is a duo that worked with a lot of cover art during the 90s and 2000s, and is very interesting because here again we really see just the impact of the digital and of these imageries that are so embedded in the day-to-day that oftentimes we wouldn't necessarily consider as worthy of being in a museum, but that have had such a big impact on our visual lexicons. And particularly when I see this, I think of a lot of artists that are working within collage, that are working within almost these imaginaries of queerness, of black and brown bodies, of cultural representations that aren't normally seen and aren't typically represented, but that are almost pieced together in a very almost comical and very meme-like way, but at the end of the day really have almost this futurity about them, right? That are very like playful, very comical, but at the end of the day still bring in these cultural symbols, and that definitely are very representative of the time and of the culture that they were created in. I feel what it means to have digital art in LACMA is this really like delicate and almost controversial exploration of what digital art means as a whole. As we know, when we talk about the digital, the virtual, anything that has to do with these new kind of like emerging technologies, when we talk about new media, when we talk about all of these explorations in art, it is almost very challenging to say, okay, what are we going to include? What are the narratives that are going to be explored within art? So I think what it means to have a show like this, Digital Witness at LACMA, is really opening up the conversation as to what type of art is going to be emerging and what type of art is going to be shown. So it really is a treat and a almost kind of early look at, as to what is to come, because we know that digital art has been here, is here, and will continue to be here. So to have a show like this is just going to be a very almost kind of like visionary, imaginative space for us to say what is coming our way, what has been done, what is being made, and what places, what spaces, what narratives are also coming our way. So here we are in yet another amazing room, and this one really focuses on the archive. And something that I think is very, very interesting is the way that the archive, in terms of the digital, becomes a site of recuperation, a site of possibility, wherein there's a lot of disenfranchised communities that did not have access to technologies to even archive or document the self. And particularly when we think about this, the site of the archive becomes a space of possibility and almost of these fictitious presents or futures or pasts that were not able to be documented, right? So I think something that really calls to me about this room is how the archive via the digital becomes a site of almost this fictitious world building, of this exploration, of calling in these pasts, these presents that sometimes are erased or forgotten, but really creating them based on this idea of what can be and what will be. And something that is really impactful for me is really just thinking about how the archive, again, is a site of possibility, a site of construction. And here we are with this very iconic piece by Alma Lopez. And the idea is really, how are we inserting ourselves in these narratives, in these visual lexicons that oftentimes we are intentionally erased from. So the archive through the digital really becomes a site of recuperation, of remembering, and also of world building, and it becomes a site of possibility. And it makes me really think about Zonorica's work, who is a Paraguayan digital artist who really talks about and explores this idea of indigenous futurity and how we can use the digital and digital mediums to really call forth these sites of possibility and of remembrance, and also honoring perhaps other stories, other visions that are oftentimes forgotten or erased.
This is a work by the artist Casey Reese, and it is a work that is created entirely through coding. Casey is an artist who uses code as his medium and creates these kinetic works that are inspired by different poetic coding languages. And Casey is an incredible Los Angeles-based artist who is also at UCLA in the Design Media Art program. He really is someone who has been at the foreground of these types of digital practices. And what is so incredible about this work is that you will never see the same work twice. It is constantly in motion, it is emerging, it has its own process that it is moving through. And I really want to highlight that Casey works mostly with open source software, which means that any artist from around the world can use this software because it is available for anyone to use for free. And that is a big part of Casey's ethos, is to work within these softwares that are accessible to artists all over the world, regardless of their income status.
If I'm going to make any digital art, I really like this kind of idea of glitch, based art.
We've been talking a lot about glitch, yeah.
I like that, it feels organic too, in a way, because it's unpredictable. You can't completely control a glitch 100%, but there's some level of unpredictability. So that kind of, I think, is interesting. But yeah, I'm like actually quite happy that this museum decided that it was important to show digital work. And then you have it's a fairly large show, because you have the full half the second floor, part of the first floor.
And I think us as digital artists, we're just so excited that LACMA is wanting to contextualize and bring it into a certain history. That's for us what's really exciting as artists working within the medium.
Yeah, it should be exciting because it really legitimizes to another level. Like, I didn't realize to what degree digital art was being collected and how important it was within the art world, but apparently it is, but it's going to get more important as museums start to show more digital art and increase people's awareness and appreciation of that. And that's why I appreciate this show the most, is because it's opened up my mind more than where I was prior to this particular exhibition. I could say that probably a lot of the time, that's plausible that every show to some degree does that, but this one especially, in my recent memory, like, I could feel like this show really opened up my mind more than any show that I could particularly recall in the past 2 years or so that I've been here.
Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So here we are in, I think, just a very poignant and lovely way to conclude. Here we are when we're talking about the World Wide Web, and this is such an important way to discuss the way that digital art is accessed and displayed. More contemporarily, a lot of the digital works that we saw today exist and were created for online spaces, which I think is so powerful. And here particularly, I want to draw attention to Snowfro, who is Erica Leron from Mexico, called Chromie Squiggle 9999 from the year 2024. And this is actually an NFT, and I really want to make an emphasis on the fact that it is an NFT and labeled as an NFT, as an algorithmic edition of 10,000, because this is such an important discussion when we talk about digital art. How is digital art stored? How is digital art being sold? How are digital artists or anyone really working within a digital medium able to share, and not only share, but also receive compensation for their work? And I think that the blockchain, and particularly the NFTs, is a very important conversation to discuss. So I really want to make emphasis on the fact that this is an NFT piece being displayed at LACMA, and again, it is very exciting for us digital artists that are exploring possibilities of the blockchain as a space and as a vessel to not only share our digital art, but to also sell and buy other people's digital art.
I just want to put a little plug in for the video that Lineadeluz and I made on digital art, crypto art, NFTs. If you're interested in learning more, there is more information that's available, and I'll make sure to link that in the show notes.
So here we are in front of this gallery of Sprüth muggers, and here we are viewing some avatars by the artist John Rafman. And we're very excited because we're going to go see this work, this exhibition that I have heard is made completely with AI. We are very excited to see the way that an artist is envisioning their relationship with this changing technology, with this emerging technology. So yeah, look at these wonderful, amazing, very intricate and detailed avatars. I'm very, very interested. And again, continuing this idea of how are we using technology, in this case AI, to imagine almost parallel realities, parallel visions, parallel ideas of what reality can be. Again, here we are entering at Sprüth muggers and with John Rafman, proof of concept.
Just subscribed to your newsletter.
Oh, you did? That's awesome. That's beautiful. Thank you. I'm actually filming a future episode.
internet and social media was the full democratization, and it was very utopian vibes in Silicon Valley and around new media culture. And now it's the opposite, right? It's actually driven us further apart, polarized us. But in truth, it's just both, right? Everything, especially technology, has the ability to drive us further apart and bring us closer together. And I think, as an artist, I want to not shy away from these tools. And yeah, it's just an incredible tool to be able to tell stories now that might have cost me so much more money and required, a lifetime of mastering a certain technique, which, puts certain people, makes their professions obsolete, but that's, the dark reality of technological, progress, or quote unquote progress. The other thing is, I think what's really interesting about me just using technology, these new AI tools in the past 3-4 years, is like the transformation of the AI itself in 2-3 years is more than like the photograph in over 200 years. Like the daguerreotype looks like a modern day photograph, while you look at some of this AI that's no longer even available to anybody, and it's like painterly abstraction that has its own beauty, and that is now gone. So, it is kind of exciting also to be able to, make work with something that will be obsolete maybe in 6 months too. And then that becomes a document of that moment in time.
Hi, so we're here at Sprüth Maggers for the John Rafman conversation. And something that I really want to kind of emphasize and touch on after seeing some of his very eclectic, surreal, AI-generated imagery, stories, kind of like visions that I really want to touch on was the fact that he said in terms with, again, a lot of this new technology, particularly AI, we want to let it do its own thing. Like, we want to make sure that we are pushing up against the limits, the boundaries, the edges, and really lean into the particular aesthetics of that technology. Something that was very interesting that I feel like I've seen also in my own generations and explorations with AI is how quickly this technology is changing, and even the platforms that anyone can use. Just the quality of the images, the type of images that are being generated, like they are very particular of a moment in time with that technology, and I think that's something that we definitely see a lot in his work. This very like creepypasta, glitched out, very maximalist muchness that is the internet in all of its kind of saturation of imagery and stories. So I think definitely and like rabbit holes too, and just going into almost these like different dimensions. And something that he was talking a lot about made me think about also quantum realities, how with his exploration of creating his own TV channel, media channel, you get kind of these vignettes of kind of ridiculousness that almost become very confrontational in how ridiculous they are, and also how violent they can also get to. And what does that mean again for kind of like this endless flipping of channels, right, with these like stories constantly changing and these different characters where their lives that are very seemingly mundane but at the same time very almost surreal, very like related to like this idea of like reality TV, where we're obsessed with watching these people's lives that are just something that he mentions that are just decaying or falling apart, or very fever dream-ish, right? Like a lot of was mentioned too was just kind of like the collapse of the American dream and these imaginaries for white America. And I think like that's very interesting to just remind ourselves that AI really is a tool for visual exploration, visual manifestation, and this is just one example of how each individual artist can really tap into the imaginaries that they are connected to the visual legacies that they are connected to the media. This is something that also John mentions too, is like the media that was consumed either by a particular age group or by a particular geography or country, right? How does that impact these imaginaries? And I'm seeing that a lot here. Like it gives me like Cops, like 2000 like Cops, family footage, right? Where you would send in like these tapes of your family footage, and it would be these like kind of like very mundane but also ridiculous and comedic stories. So it's giving me a lot of that too. And I think that's something so important to think about, right? It's like, what are the imaginaries that each artist is tapping into, and how are they bringing that into the visionary sphere of AI, right? Who is being made present? How are they being made present? What is being made present? I think is so important. And yeah, it made me think a lot too about some of my AI explorations, for example, that are very much in this idea of connecting and almost channeling different past like celebrities that have passed. Like David Bowie has come across through very strongly. I've channeled Jenny Rivera, Selena, Frida Kahlo through these AIs, and to imagine them in a time and place where they haven't been. But again, like these AI imaginaries where, you know, we have just so many images available at our resource. Like, how are we also processing them and like churning them and seeping them through the machinery and the imaginaries of AI, and what is that generating, right? So a lot of this content too, you know, we have to remember AI is sourced from archives, from data. So it's like, where's this data coming from? You know, it'd be so interesting to learn about like the artists, you know, information, imagery that was filled or that was, you know, processed through their AI. You know, was it their own personal archive? Is it from the internet? Like, again, what photos, what images, what videos are being processed? So, I mean, there's definitely a lot to discuss because we're again talking about technology, you know, like what processes are they using? They said that they have a 12-person team. So what does it mean to like start manifesting literally like these creations of AI? You know, they're really being at the service of this AI creation that also sometimes can feel like it escapes just one person, right? So again, like I really like to think about how we can become channelers for the vessel of AI, for this consciousness. They also mentioned about AI being another species. I don't know if you remember what it was called.
It was like advanced species.
It was they named it, I think I wrote it down, but it was like a new type of species where it's like we're engaging with consciousness that obviously has is very grounded in the material, but doesn't, like at the end of the day, it's still combined from so many different sources of knowledge. So, I mean, definitely very contemporary. I think this is very like on par after seeing Digital Witness, because I think this is the best way to demonstrate the way that the digital can serve witness when it's something that is a collaboration now with this new form of consciousness that comes out of the digital, right? So, I mean, a lot to be said. Edgar, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you think, what came to you?
I'm really sitting with how we create realities both within ourselves as well as through the media, the art that we create, and also what we consume. And the artist really shared that this was about his relationship to video and to film and TV, and what happens when we stop having references that we can rely on comfortably to connect us. And he really spoke of AI as being a technology that really speaks to this fragmentation of reality that we're living within, and it can replicate and represent this fragmentation through its own algorithmic synthesizing. It can actually like help us understand this radical new imaginary that we're living within that has very few reference points, if any. It's more of a constellation or a web or a rhizome as opposed to having a singular root or a singular place. There are many ways to enter this work, and I feel like it also speaks to creating environments for people to explore that maybe have central points, but also have a lot of different areas, different portals that you can go within. And to me, this really, exemplifies some of the conversations we were having around the many ways that our work can intersect within the digital realm. And I'm just so grateful for having these conversations around the legacy, the lineages, the way that digital has its own aesthetic, that is tied very much into culture, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you all. How do you connect with the digital? What are you feeling about AI? Let us know how you're feeling about all these radical new imaginaries that we are living within, knowing that we're also in an intense time where so much is emerging, so much is collapsing, so much is transforming. And we're also being called to step into our power as artists, as visionaries, as reality creators, constructors, creatrixes. Yes, and don't forget, your art is a spell, and it will change your life and the world around you. Thank you.
Thank you.